Hi everyone, welcome to Tired Technician. Today we're going to be looking at this, the Aruba 5406r zl2. So this is it, the Aruba 5406r zl2. This particular model is the JL095A, and that means it comes with this module and this module. Each of them are 8 SFP Plus ports, allowing for 10 gigabit modules to be connected. It's also got a single management module in the top as standard. It does, however, if I can turn this, come with no power supplies as default, and you'll actually find that a lot on these module switches if you want to buy them. They've got no power supplies with them, and you've got to buy the correct ones. The specs and numbers for them are written on the back of the power supply blanking areas. So, for my particular setup that I've got to do, these modules are actually in the wrong place, because this is replacing an old HP switch with similar module setups, but due to where everything is going to go, I need to move the modules down one slot. You can simply undo the blanking plates with a torque screwdriver or a simple flathead, and then you undo what you want to replace, once again, Torx or flathead. Modules themselves are actually quite large cards. As you can see, they do an awful lot. You can see the SFP modules over here, and they've got the proprietary connections on them. Now all you do is simply slot it back in and do up the nuts again. It isn't necessarily always easy. Do each side up a little bit, because they are sprung loaded, and then you can give them a proper tighten afterwards. Normally, in this particular case, I would replace the blanking cover. However, I have other modules that need to go in here, so I will leave that for now. I'll just get on with doing the other one. I'm not sure if I explained this before. What you need to do to take these out is pull these metal tabs out, and that will cause it to pop out and release. And similarly, when you put them back in, you push it in using the metal tabs before doing up the screws. So next up, we're going to install the modules above. In this particular case, they are 24-port PoE Plus modules. These are in fact the HP 24P 10, 100, 1000 base T PoE Plus V3 ZL2s. That's part number J9986A. These modules are this, standard network ports. They obviously provide the PoE Plus, as stated by the sticker. Similar fitting, first of all, pull the tabs out. Then just slot them in. And push the tabs until it clicks in place. You can then do up the screws. We'll do the same on the other side. And that is the PoE ports fitted. Normally for this kind of switch I wouldn't use Gig-T Ethernet. I would usually have this as a pure SFP Plus switch, but this is replacing an existing piece of hardware which combines a core switch and an edge switch. So for now, this is what's being fitted, but in the future, the modules can at least be taken out and replaced with something that we actually need. The next thing we're going to install is the secondary redundant management module. That goes in this slot here. It provides redundancy for the management. If one of the modules happens to fail, the rest of the switch will continue working happily. You do need a working management module for the switch to work. From the front, it looks exactly the same as the other one. But if you look at it from the side, you can see it's basically a small computer. It's got removable RAM, it's got the boot drive, and lots of other little custom chips. And its connector is very different on the back. So, as with the other ones, you first of all remove the blanking point. These are actually a little stiff, but that's okay. Interestingly, on the older model of these, they actually had a little strip under here to prevent you from taking the management modules out while the system was still up and running. So you actually had to power it down. But I believe with this model they have made it hot swap. So if you have a failure, you can simply switch over. Okay. And much like the connectivity modules, you can slide it in and push the arms to pull it in. You then do up the screws in a similar fashion. I'll talk through the ports on the front of this quickly. This is the management port. It's the one you mainly connect to your network, and you can access the management features on board using this. You've got standard console ports here. You've got your serial port style connection, which uses the RJ45 connector. I don't know why a lot of things do that, but it's an old Cisco throwback. And you've got this, which is just a USB connection, and in there is a USB to serial converter, which will actually allow you to not necessary to have the serial port on your laptop or machine you're administering from, and that lets you access the command line very, very easily. You also got the LED mode here, which basically you can go through activity, connectivity, speed, power over Ethernet, and user. I have no idea what that last one is, to be honest. It's not actually written down in the user manual for this, and I've never met anyone that's particularly sure. Okay. Next up, we're going to move on to doing the power supply. So I'll flip this round, and we'll work through how the power supply is going. Now, to begin fitting the power supplies, the first thing to do is remove the blanking plates from the rear. Once again, standard Torx screws. Sorry, trying to keep my hand out of shot here as much as possible. Ugh. Yeah, these are a little tight. You only need one power supply to run these switches, but you know, redundancy is always better. And that's the point of these modular things. You're supposed to be able to be fully redundant and part swap really quickly. So as you can see here, hopefully you can, there's a little groove there the power supply should slot onto. And they just come like this. It's got the C15 style connector, which has the little notch in it, which means you need the matching type of power lead, which thankfully came with these power supplies. Now, you may be wondering why we need 900 watts for PoE Plus twice, giving us 1800 watts, when we've only got like 48 ports on the front. Now, that's simple. We were going to get the 700 watt power supplies for this, but the 1100 watt power supplies were cheaper. So, you know, why wouldn't you get the better ones for cheaper? Now, these, ideally, should be done up loosely in a cross pattern. Like so. They're a little bit fiddly. Not too bad. Of course, these power supplies are hot swappable, so if you have one of them fail, you can very, very easily replace them, but do unplug them from the mains first so they disengage. Otherwise, you might get yourself a nasty shock. Realistically, you should power off the switch when replacing the power supplies, but I have done a live swap on this myself. And it does work, but it isn't recommended. You can see, disconnect all AC power cords to completely remove power from this unit. Basically, on the bottom of these, in case I haven't pointed it out, you've got slides, which do go onto the slides that are in the case. They're not too hard to line up. Sort of just put it in the hole, and it slides in super easily. No little tabs on these ones. So once again, we do it up with the cross pattern. Some people leave them a little loose so they're thumb untightenable. I don't like to leave the power supplies loose personally, but you know, that's a matter of preference, to be honest. The other thing to note on the back is you've got your earthing point up here for when you connect it to a cabinet. And that is the power supply fitting. Right, before I continue on, I will show you the fan tray. All of the switches come with one of these, and it's basically the cooling for a switch, because they are a side cooling switch. And these fan units are not too bad, really expensive to replace, and they are hot swappable. So if you have a fan failure, you can simply buy for the fan unit. And it's basically a load of fans on a board, like so. Not too hard to replace. And much like everything else in this, slide in, slide out, modular. And for the most part, you can just do these up tight to begin with. Because once it's pushed in, it's slotted in already, and since they're above each other, nothing particularly special you need to do. Okay. So now we're going to fit the rack ears. These are fairly hefty bits of metal, a couple of mounting points. In this particular case, it doesn't particularly matter which way up you actually put them. It's all down to your preference. I personally prefer that way. But as you can see, the other side will be the opposite of that anyway. So these simply fit with tiny little screws. Got your standard cross point fitting, and because they've got these little notches on them, you can actually line them up fairly easily to the side, and they sort of clack into place. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. Each one of these takes 4 screws, and this is all included in the box. Not a particularly interesting watch, I know, so I'll probably speed this up from here until completion. Now we rotate this one so you can see it a bit better. So, got that there. There you go. See, it's all clicked in now. And because I'm really awkward with screwdrivers, just start the first one off a little bit with fingers. Then screw it up. And there we go, there it is with the racketeers fitted. You may have seen underneath here, there's you might see something poke out occasionally. That is just the manuals that came with it that I'm using so I can rotate it on the table without scratching the switch or the table. So the last thing to do now is just plug it in and get it turned on. So I've got 2 power leads for each power supply. So I will plug in the back now. Yeah, that's booted up. You see the little test there. What we've got over here on the left is we have the fact that this is active and that's lit up. And over on the other side, the standby light is lit up. And basically this automatically gets the config from this module. So if this module fails, it'll automatically switch over to that. That'll flash with an error state, and this will go to active. On the front of them, you've got little system reset, clears, and shutdown, reset. Kind of useful if you get like a used switch or a used part, just very easy to fix. As you can see, once it's booted up, on the noise level, it's not actually too bad. You know, it's not something I'd like to have next to me in an office, but for a little server room, or if you want one of these for your home network even, you know, you could have them in, like, you know, a little cupboard somewhere, and it would be fine. One important thing to mention is never ever throw these blanking plates away. Not for the management modules, not for the main modules. The reason being is they've got little conductive strips on the top and the bottom. These actually perform 2 functions. They're kind of spongy, but what they also do is they prevent dust from going in the front. They allow the chassis to earth continuously through all the other ports, and, you know, without them the switch will very quickly fill with dirt. And that's pretty much all there is to putting one of these together. Not too hard. If you're going to get one of these for the first time, please, please, please contact a reseller or partner. There's so many module options, so many power supply options, that it's best to get the opinion of a professional given your requirements for a switch like this. Later on in the week, we'll be releasing a video on how to configure this, both command line and graphical user interface. We will do both kinds of setups, exactly the same each time, so you can see how one relates to the other. If you've liked this video, give us a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. If you didn't like the video, let us know why and what we could do to improve in the future. Thanks for watching, we'll catch you again.